Every so often, a video game comes along that is perfectly aligned with my moral and spiritual values. Valheim is such a game, and it reached out and touched me in a special place. Not in a creepy way. Valheim creates a platform for the player to manifest their true sense of purpose and inner being in an ethereal and transcendental world. Valheim transports you to a realm full of hunting, strip mining, large-scale logging operations, pollution, wholesale environmental destruction. Just cut it all down. It's the environment, right? It will grow back. Probably. And if it doesn't, it obviously wasn't very important anyway. Welcome to Valheim. Nature is horrible, and now you get to destroy it all. Valheim is already a phenomenon. As a small indie survival game with low polygon graphics, where you start out punching pigs and picking berries, it does not fit the usual form for a video game that tears into the Steam charts, currently sitting as the third most played game on Steam. A game made by a team of developers small enough to fit in one peep show booth, where you start out chasing deer around in your skiddies, has sold 5 million copies and has a 96% review approval rating on Steam. Valheim is superficially simple, but is ultimately incredibly complex. At its core, it's an excellent game system built from the ground up, as opposed to most AAA games, which are pitched as stylised marketing projects for secondary sales and monetization, and the game is cobbled together and bolted on the back end of the storefront like a cheap facade in a western frontier town. Valheim is one of the biggest indie phenomenon in years. So I reckon that demands some serious attention. As a rule, I generally don't review early access games for many reasons. I don't want to encourage anyone to buy an unfinished product. The early access model pushes the financial risk onto the consumer, and its very existence is a symptom that big publishers are frequently not inclined to patronise and support inspired independent games. However brilliant the concept. I guess that's why so many great indie games come out of the blue, and then AAA publishers cynically spend years trying to recreate that indie magic by copying them. Frequently, reviewing an early access game can be a bit like trying to review a car whilst it's still moving along the conveyor belt. However, in this case, certainly, the game is already in a sufficiently developed state for me to justify the purchase price. I've played the shit out of it. Developed by Iron Gate Studios, a tiny indie developer with 5 staff, apparently. Co-founded by Henrik Turnqvist and Richard Svensson. The game concept was first sketched out in a small indie proto-game called Fade, which Svensson reportedly developed in his free time. It shared a lot of the bare bones of Valheim, but was considerably simpler and less well developed. Svensson, incidentally, was also the man behind Tolroko, a prototype procedurally generated open-world sci-fi game inspired by the author Edgar Rice Burroughs, who wrote the Barsoom series of books. So I will call it now. After the success of Valheim, in a year or two, Iron Gate Studios' next game will be a sci-fi offering in the same vein. And I shit ye not, I'm already hyped, given what I've seen with Valheim. On top of all this goodness and indie wholesomeness, Iron Gate Studios had the business acumen and video game savvy to team up with publishers Coffee Stain Publishing. Well, I say this based on suddenly realising who Coffee Stain work with. For all I know, they might be running a prostitute ring out the back of the office and being investigated in a bunch of murders. However, after at least cursory, superficial and legally non-binding investigation, Coffee Stain Publishing are the likeable fucks behind such games as Satisfactory, Sanctum, Sanctum 2, Deep Rock Galactic, one of my Games of the Year nominations, and a game that defined a generation and raised the collective consciousness of the video game community, Goat Simulator. This is some optimal grade A shit and good pedigree. But like I said, they might be wanted for murder for all I fucking know. Not that I would judge them for that. Perhaps they only murder arseholes. I don't know. I should qualify that I'm playing on PC and I have not beaten the game. I had to make myself stop playing the damn thing in order to finish my recent videos. I keep getting distracted building weird bases and trying to recreate the old London Bridge in a forest. I also need to be upfront that I'm in no way an expert on Valheim. I have just played the shit out of it. I thought I was doing pretty well with my Viking longboat, smelting bronze and setting up portals, but even a quick look at dedicated Valheim channels will clearly demonstrate that I have a ton more to explore and do in this game. And some players are pushing the game's building mechanics way further than anyone probably imagined was possible. I'm talking, people are building bases on such an impressive scale that they would look right at home in a game like Skyrim. Not even kidding. So what is Valheim? It's a third-person, Viking-themed open-world survival game set in a procedurally generated world, unique for each individual playthrough. Single player or co-op, you can have a public or private server with up to 10 players on it at any one time. Personally, I'm Billy No Mates, so I'm playing solo, but I can already appreciate what a team of 10 people could achieve on one server if they all coordinated together on one megastructure. Valheim is currently available on Windows and Linux. There are no concrete plans announced to publish the game on console yet, but in an interview the developers stated that they have not ruled it out and anything is possible. If I had finished that sentence for them, I would have said, anything is possible when you just shifted 5 million units on PC and I've just filled my swimming pool with Mweta Shondon and fucking hookers. But I guess that's why I don't work in PR. So we will all have to wait and see, but I sincerely hope they release this on console, so console players can have their lives disrupted by this game too. In the game, you play the part of a sorry soul sent to Valheim in the Norse Afterlife. You are the spirit of a slain Viking warrior cast into purgatory, where you have to prove your worth to Odin by defeating a group of Forsaken Ones and reclaiming Valheim from their grasp. Obviously this task is complicated by the fact that Valheim is a rather hostile place full of weaponised pigs and far, far worse. The Forsaken bosses you have to kill are fairly hard bastards, and you arrived wearing nothing but your crusty looking underwear made of rags. Personally, I tend to avoid hurling myself into dangerous situations wearing only my pants. Not saying that I haven't ever done it before, but it does tend to put you at a disadvantage and certainly makes the police report sound a bit creepy. Because each playthrough procedurally generates a new random world every time, you and potentially your friends will be facing the same general challenges, but in unique circumstances. So whilst there are a ton of general guides, nobody can tell you the precise location of the bosses or the one single vendor in your world. In your world, you need to go out and find this shit, and finding this shit can frequently be very dangerous. You have to work your way outward from your central starting island across an archipelago of islands set in a vast sea, using a combination of land and sea travel. There are 5 types of biome, or environment, each with different resources, creatures, enemies and progressive levels of danger. Meadow, black forest, swamp, mountains, plains. As you progress in the game, you gradually change from being the prey to becoming the hunter, one biome at a time. The meadow seems threatening at first, but quickly becomes a benign safe space for farming food, flint, timber and stone. One minute the pigs are chasing you, and the next minute no pig will be safe from your bloodlust and fury. At the other end of the biome scale, places like the plains remain potentially dangerous even at relatively high level. These 5 biomes are relatively mixed up geographically, sometimes all 5 occurring on the same island. As a general rule, the game is very good at informing you when you have stumbled into a biome which is above your level of preparedness, by having some monster you have never seen before run over and skullfuck you. The music and lighting will probably change too, and just as you are soaking up the atmospheric vibes, that atmosphere will likely be swiftly ruined by an enemy attack, just like your base. Being one-shotted is this game's grammar for informing you ain't ready yet, and it's frequently hilarious and sometimes a decent jump scare. As a general rule, if you see a creature you have never seen before coming right at you, back away with your shield raised and start scanning the ground around you for a comfy place to die. Technically, the sea is the 6th biome in the game. You have to sail from island to island and circumnavigate islands to explore and establish footholds further out. That is frequently an adventure in itself, and not to be undertaken lightly. You might set off in your crappy raft with the wind behind you on a perfect sunny day, with the breeze rustling your tousled hair, and take a peaceful island hop and set up an exploratory base on the next island. Or the weather might turn to rat shit, the wind starts blowing in the opposite direction, and before you know it, it's night time and you're trying to row across the sea in the middle of a storm to an island you haven't even found yet. And let's not even mention that potentially there are sea monsters sniffing around the back of your boat, looking for a free meal. The game visually looks old school initially. They're apparently deliberately trying to ape PS1 levels of low poly count graphics. However, they have modern visual effects piled on top. Basically, it's very simple skins and models with a ton of visual and lighting effects added to it. The end result is a game that looks low tech but somehow still manages to be frequently beautiful. The best way I can describe it is that it looks like a game that could run on a 2015 smartphone where a video game in-game photographer went apeshit on it with digital photographic effects. I'm not normally a fan of these kind of visuals, but the game swept me away, and I've come to like them immensely. Functionality and fuckery. Valheim is a delightfully fuckery-free experience. It is early access, so there are some genuine issues that need to be ironed out. The graphics of your lovely buildings do have a tendency to pop in at a distance, so as you approach your bases in the early morning mist, they tend to come into view piecemeal. A panel here, a support post there, maybe an entire floor is missing until you get closer. Who knows? It's not a good look, but I've seen it in lots of AAA games, especially in the likes of Fallout 4. Personally, I get a slight hang freeze when the game saves. Early game, this was merely a few frames. Now it's sometimes up to half a second. I can only assume that as I do more in the world, my save data is increasing in size. I've been fairly diligent with hoovering up crap since I heard a rumour that littering the world with random unlooted shite can slow down your server, so it's not that. Even though I don't know with certainty if that is a real thing or just an old wives' tale. I've also heard and seen reports that there are some public server issues which are still ongoing, with some players experiencing latency and lag. I can't personally comment accurately on this one because I'm a one-man band playing privately, so apart from an occasional 1 second pulse of lag a couple of times an hour, my performance is generally mint. I would suggest checking the subreddit for up-to-date information if you plan on setting up a big party of players together. The only significant issue, or potential threat, is the known World Destroyer bug. Apparently there is a very small but devastating chance that you might suffer a corrupt server save and then lose the damn lot. Progress wiped, game over. I am following the simple but less than ideal method of going into my app data folder and periodically saving a copy of all of my data to my desktop so that I can manually restore if required. I strongly advise this. I would be fairly gutted to wake up one morning and discover my stone-walled dock or giant elevated coastal home had gone for a fucking Burton because of a coding issue. So seriously, if you're going to play this game, back up your game data every IRL few days. Other than this, there is nothing to report. There was very little to rebind, and the rebinding system was straightforward and entirely unrestricted. You rebind what you like, and if there's a conflict, well, fuck you, you're a grown-up, so figure it out. It was wonderful. No restrictions, no complications, all done in seconds. It's also a given that this game was cheap, and comes with 0 pedo caches and microtransactional shitfuckery. The mechanics of Valheim are central to its success. The basic palette of mechanics in this game is what makes it so addictive and fun. You have a day-night cycle. At night you get cold in the wilds, suffer reduced health and stamina regen. There are more and worse enemies and you can't see jack shit. Unless you are well buffed and up for a solid grind, it's better to sleep through the night, somewhere safe. Plus, I get shit scared at night and prefer to tuck up in my straw bed nice and cosy. Don't judge me, it's dark for fuck's sake. The different biomes basically provide a scale threat with a higher risk, higher reward system. Some of the best resources are in some of the worst shitholes. Rest and food buffs. Being rested buffs your character. Being well fed with the best foodstuffs buff you further. You are relatively weak when hungry and unrested. Similarly, if you get wet, you get debuffed, so drying off by a toasty fire spams you right up again. The loot is predictable and limited. You farm certain mobs because they reliably drop certain materials you need for crafting of some description. You go and kill pigs because they drop leather scraps and meat, not because there's a 1% chance to drop some epic gear. You make your own gear. You are required to explore and expand in the world. This brings rewards but might get you killed. There is a simple, basic set of skills. They level from 0 to 100 as you use them, just like Skyrim. That's it. No perk trees or anything fancy. If you want to get better at cutting down trees, go and cut down some fucking trees. It's simple. You are required to clear dungeons. These contain various handy resources, but particularly circling cores, the primary component in high-end crafting and portals. These are rarer than rocking horse shit and can be a real choke point for progress if your randomly generated Valheim decides to dick you over. It all ultimately depends on luck regarding how many dungeons are on your islands and how many resources are in there. It's a crapshoot that throttles your progress, and the only cure is checking out the next island for more locations. There are roaming threats. You might think you're relatively well established in an area and then encounter a sudden surprise shock. Some areas have particularly nasty surprises waiting for you, but I'll let you discover that for yourself. The survival mechanics, described as forgiving, although they are more sort of front-loaded. Consequences of death are less, but not getting your buffs, gear and plans sorted out in advance leads to impaired performance, lower character stats, higher likelihood of failure and a potentially problematic corpse run. Especially problematic if you are then required to run naked to a location where, fully geared, you got your ass kicked. So yes, death is a mechanic too. If you fuck up or get fucked up, you die and lose 5% of your skill gains. You respawn at your last bedtime nap location in your fucking skiddies, and all your gear is piled neatly where you died. Invariably in the middle of a pack of angry mobs, or under a boss's angry jockstrap. The game has a tech tree. From wooden club to portals, you progressively work up from punching pigs to crafting, smelting ore that you dig up with a pickaxe, and eventually you end up building giant bases with elaborate defences. You progress towards the point where you can shape the ground, construct fast travel portals and build a decent Viking ship for exploring the seas, where you may end up getting slapped by a sea monster, but I don't want to take the shine off your enjoyment. The tech tree also impacts how you explore. It's all very well heading off to a faraway island wearing all your fine bronze armour and packing your finest bronze head-crushing mace, but you won't be able to necessarily repair it easily. High-end kit requires high-end workbenches to repair, so you either resign yourself to teching up in the new location, or travel with lower tier kit that you can easily cobble repairs on in a basic bitch workstation. It is however worth noting that there is nothing stopping you from going back to punch a few pigs if that's what gets you stiff. The tech tree works basically like this. With your bare hands, you can craft 4 basic things out of the wood and stone that can be gathered without tools. A club, to bash things with. A hammer, to build things with. A stone axe, with which to commence deforestation to gather wood. A torch, to light your way. Or hit things with. Your call. From these basic devices you can gather wood, build a basic workbench, repair your stuff, and begin your little Viking tech journey. Gathering different resources allows you to build more complicated workbenches, tools, gear, and building items, and it's one big virtuous circle. Go and kill some pigs, gather some flint and chop some wood, make a tanning rack. Move from making rag clothes to leather armour, and eventually armour made from troll hide. If you can dig it up, chop it down, or fucking kill it, it will drop some resource that will at least be vaguely useful for something. Gather more exotic materials, make more exotic workbenches and gear. Similarly, as you progress through building more sophisticated workbenches and tools, you can also build new and different architectural items for your Viking pimp palace, like better support beams, defences, fancy shit to hang on your walls, and cosy rugs to put in front of the fire. Teching up allows you to unlock new tools, which allow you to smooth out the terrain or cultivate crops, leading to improved cooking recipes and foodstuffs. Better weapons and armour are unlocked during this process, and significantly, your ability to repair your kit is also linked to your workbench equipment level. So if you rock up to some random shithole in the middle of the night with a basic repair bench, sporting this summer's most fashionable range in metal armour and high-tech Norse weaponry, you ain't going to be able to repair it. I still have a way to go with teching up, but already my most advanced base has gone so far beyond a wood cabin that when I get up in the morning it feels like Viking fucking housework. Stoke up the smelter, fuel up the furnace, refuel the fires, feed the pigs, check on the carrots, collect the honey from the hives. Make sure the boat didn't get damaged in the dock overnight. See what I mean? It's delightfully obsessive. There is literally only one trader in the game, and he spawns randomly in your randomly generated world, and until you find him, you are basically fucked. Right now I'm sitting on a giant pile of money, which is less useful than pigskin until I can do more exploring and find the little elusive bastard. He basically sells the fishing rod and some other random crap. Not game changing, but fishing minigames a win, right? Some comparisons could be made between Valheim and chess, although I'm always loath to use that comparison. Primarily because it's fucking pretentious as fuck. However, Valheim is simple and coherent, and the mechanics, rules and goals all work together simply to create an excellent game. A literal game, not some digital doing work arena. Everything seems to have a simple design and purpose in the game, just like pieces on a chessboard. It's simple, but it's coherent. It's not over fussy and over complicated to give the illusion of complexity. Chess might be simple, but the end result is complex, just like Valheim. Relatively simple and uncomplicated systems, where the outcome is increasingly sophisticated as the game advances. This is not like some fancy overcomplicated AAA game stuffed with gear, high stats, pointlessly complicated interacting systems that create mess and balancing issues. You don't see the International Chess Federation announcing, "Oh, we decided to nerf queens and buff knights in the next patch and see if that balances the game." Constantly rebalancing a game on the fly is a sign that you created an overly complex system, guessed a bunch of stuff and had no fucking clue how it would all play out. That's why we see it happen so much in overcomplicated, overcalculating, loot-heavy looter shooters and MMOs. I mean, the devs working on the game can barely keep up with what all the numbers are doing, how the stats and perks interact, and what the end result will be. But then again, that's what happens when games have 20 different gear sets, 50 different perks, endless skills and gear talents, all made in a rush by people who know damn well that randomly nerfing things later will just force players to stay engaged and regrind more shit gear sets. Valheim is a game where you have stats like +2 armour on a cloak, an axe that does 35 damage, and food that gives you +2 health per tick. It's simple, low stats, and you can figure it out without getting out a calculator. I think so far they've only rebalanced a couple of things, one being the dreaded Death Skeeto, which is literally the size of a hummingbird, fast as fuck, and can literally skull fuck the player in one bone penetrating strike to the head. I literally built a base where the only way these fuckers could get in was by flying down a chimney and chancing their luck flying through 3 raging bonfires. I can personally accept that nerf. They also nerfed how often something does an animated sequence and how often pet wolves fuck. Don't even ask. These are tweaks, not exercises in rebalancing really. Who knows what the future will bring, mind. I certainly would not object to maybe a few more items being added to the tech tree. So in the unlikely event Iron Gate Studios ever watches this video, I would humbly suggest the following few sensible items be added to the game. Maybe a chainsaw? Dynamite mining charges? Or possibly a flamethrower? Nothing that violates Norse mythological lore, mind. Just a standard US Army M2 flamethrower would do the trick. And maybe a tiny little thermonuclear warhead. Take them or leave them, these are just my thoughts. So what is my overall take on Valheim? I can't vouch for how this game will appeal to specific people. It's an open world survival, crafting and building game, so it tickles all 3 of my nipples. I'm one of those weirdos that loved base building in Fallout 4, and if you are like me, you will quickly be organising your days, in-game and in real life, around buildings you want to make, resources you need to gather and places you want to explore. I would note, however, that I was not convinced by this game at first because it looked like Viking Minecraft. But Jesus fuck, it is so much more than that. The tension between competing goals is a principal source of engagement. You obviously want to drive forward, but you also want to be in a good place technologically so that you can both face the increasing dangers and not be set back by an ill-timed death. When night comes or you get attacked, you learn to feel like your base is a safe haven. When exploring long range, I quickly developed the habit of stopping and setting up a defensive camp well in advance of nightfall, because trying to set up a nice campfire and do something pretty with your roof panels and chimney stack is no fun at all when the fuckers over your shoulder are constantly trying to kill you. Ask any builder from Afghanistan. Exploring is both a joy and a terror. That's the thing about exploring. You set off with a plan where you want to explore. But like many great explorers that have come before you, you made the same set of fundamental stupid mistakes. You kidded yourself that you actually had a plan, other than get lost in that rough general direction. You used the word where, when you have no fucking clue what where is, or what's there. You wrongly assumed you were doing anything beyond trying to head off in a certain direction into the unknown with a vague hope of living to tell the tale later. A lot of exploring in Valheim, particularly by sea, involves dashing off in one direction and desperately hoping you stay alive long enough to find a place to hunker down and build a hut for the night before somebody kills you. Then you can take a scooch around in the morning if you're still alive. The base building mechanics are incredibly well handled. As a Fallout 4 base building obsessive, I can honestly say this looks simpler at first glance, but actually you can do more with it. There's no requirement for mods, and there's very few issues where you need to spoof clip things together. It just works, unlike all that shit that Todd Howard bullshits about. On top of all the functional stuff you can build and make, you have unlimited scope for absolute obsessive lunacy. You can literally just get lost for days trying to do crazy shit that serves no function other than to make your existence in Valheim more enjoyable, efficient and streamlined. With the possible slight drawback that these crazy-assed plans usually involve huge investments in time, effort and perseverance. And I guess this is part of the beauty of Valheim. You end up wanking away 2 days building a bridge and a really nice coastal road, just so you can use your cart to run payloads from one base to another with increased efficiency. Even though in retrospect it would probably have only taken you a couple of hours to just take a few trips on foot and just hoof it all to the destination in your bag anyway. Overall, the build mechanics were very intuitive, very snappy, easy to use, and well developed. The tiles and components tend to want to find a way to snap together sensibly, and it's easy to work with and learn. The smoke mechanics alone deserve a bloody video game award. I'm not even kidding. The in-game smoke from your campfires is modelled, and you have to make sure they are adequately ventilated or the fires start going out. At best. At worst, you can end up filling the room with acrid smoke and choking yourself to death. It's brilliant. A video game where you literally end up becoming an expert in ducting and chimney construction. The portals are a significant game changer. They primarily turn travel between islands into a situation where you won't automatically end up cleaning the bottom of Davy Jones' locker with your tongue. Providing you keep clearing abandoned tombs in order to keep your supply of circling cores rolling in, you can quickly start to establish bridgehead stations on other islands. You cannot transport certain crafting materials like metals, but you can transport the kit you make from them. Basically, once you have unlocked this technology, you just need to get a toehold and 2 circling cores on an island, and quickly you will be colonising and looting faster than conquistadors. Only with possibly less bloodshed. The build mechanics and tools given to the player encourage you to go beyond base building and stray into world transformation. You will want to impress your will upon the world. This isn't a game where you get to build stuff within the confines of the rules. This is a game where they give you a set of tools and you get to run off and figure out all the batshit crazy ways you can manipulate your environment. You can build a footbridge between 2 islands if they're close enough. Build palisades to protect your base. I even came up with this crazy plan to build an underground bunker, but I was too late. People are already posting guides about that design. This is not build here with these options, Bethesda style. This is, here are your tools. There is a structural height limit and a depth limit. Knock yourself out. Iron Gate Studio style. There are strange parallels between Valheim and real life. One compliment to this game's design is that you end up realising why certain frontiersmen, loggers and primitive civilizations did precisely what they did. Just like you will realise why the Roman travelling armies did certain things they did. If you're constantly being attacked by scary barbarians in the forests of Central Europe, chop down the fucking forests. Ambush me now, fuckers. I certainly cleared tree lines to avoid being ambushed when I'm around my bases. As you advance into increasingly dangerous and unknown territory, you end up building logging and mining camps to use as staging points for your activities. It's a survival game where rest, warmth, food and a safe place to hunker down is critical, so you end up building shelters, huts and overnight log cabins in the arse end and beyond. You might need them as rest stops, or for storage whilst you shuttle kit back and forth between major locations. As you advance into progressively dangerous territory, you don't want to be caught outside, at night, in a storm, miles from anywhere safe. Valheim might indeed be a beautiful verdant wilderness belonging to Thor, but as night draws in, you will chop down any tree in sight, level the place, and build a defensible position with no fucks given, because pretty trees be pretty, but spiked palisades keep you alive at night. Then a point sometimes comes in the game when you've gone beyond survival, and now it's a quality of life issue. You will devastate entire forests to make pretty buildings and fancy chairs, strip mine copper out in the woods to make shiny weapons, and burn 1,000 metric tons of wood to make coal for your smelter. Fortunately, Valheim also eventually provides the means to replant, cultivate and put the wilderness back into a semi-natural looking state. Obviously, this is after you've raped it for all its resources. I guess it's down to the individual player to decide whether they leave their Valheim looking restored in their aftermath, or just say, fuck it, I've got a pretty castle, that's good enough for me. Besides, I like the world to look like a giant slag heap. It's a clever dynamic in the game because it mirrors real life. Most people, to some degree, care about the environment. I certainly do. We only currently have one planet to live on, alien conspiracies aside, so planet Earth is our home. If we destroy our home, humans will die. It's not a fucking complicated equation. It's simple self-preservation. So saving the rainforests, sign me up. Stopping multinationals turning Madagascar into a giant maize and biofuel plantation, go for it. I don't want the world to end up looking like London, where it's mostly covered in concrete and there's only one fucking tree every 500 yards. But most sensible people are not going to listen to environmental messages that are ridiculous. If people need energy, food or resources to survive, they're going to go and secure them. Immediate survival trumps any argument about an abstract future apocalypse. You can't turn around to billions of people and say, don't use petrol, use a $100,000 battery-driven luxury car made in California. Don't drill for oil, do without those nasty pesticides, pharmaceuticals and industrial lubricants. Urbanisation is bad, we should all go and live in fucking wigwams with compost toilets. I mean, imagine the stench. Environmental goals need to fit into the real world, where they can be applied, be sensible and achievable, and rolled out easily on a mass scale. Telling some poor farmer in Pakistan he can't use his fucking diesel truck because it's bad for the environment ain't gonna feed his starving kids. Valheim is a beautiful world, and you are going to transform it to service your needs, because your needs are essential to your survival. But just like humanity in general, you will most likely not stop there and end up levelling entire forests just to make pretty furniture for your luxury Viking crib. That is precisely what I ended up doing. Parents could do worse than encourage their kids to play this game. It's one of the few video games that will teach them the pragmatic balance between environmental preservation and the brute realities of resource requirements. Whilst they cut down whole forests to make fancy chairs for their Viking crib. But I hope you at least see my point. The survival mechanics are central to the game. Let's just say that 99% of the time they are entirely manageable. You wake up in your bed and you go and collect your gear from the spot where you died, minus a chunk of your experience gains. But occasionally something will happen that changes your entire day, and when it happens, it will send you reeling. Here are a few context-specific fucks in the arse I had to personally pillow bite on. I went exploring in a boat and died going around a dangerous area, and spawned back at the last base with no gear, tools or kit to get directly back there. And there was a very, very dangerous swamp indeed. It took many days gearing up on the spot and teching up to the point where I could safely reclaim my gear from my corpse. Another time I was base building and deconstructed my bed, voiding my spawn point, then got immediately attacked from behind and respawned at the very start location. And I'm talking back at location 0 at Noob Base Alpha with a few rocks and a stick, no clothes and a hunk of meat. Admittedly, the survival mechanics are fun even when they are screwing with you, but make no mistake, if you're unlucky, sometimes the survival mechanics can really, really fuck with you. Not gonna lie though, it is kind of enjoyable in a sadomasochistic way. I guess because Valheim is more like a military advancement into enemy territory than an ego-driven skill check rush to advance. You are building bases and moving up the line. Sure, you might get punted backwards, but the work you have invested means you can base hop back up to where you were and carry on, although you might need a fresh set of armour and a new flint axe. Being a few hundred yards away from all my bronze gear, then suddenly respawning back at the starting zone, 200 yards from my first ever base, in my fucking knickers, was a shock. Don't even get me started about the time I reached an island, built a base, ordered everything neatly into little rows of boxes, then set off to explore the next morning, only to immediately faceplant into a troll. A troll that smashed me, smashed my base, and smashed my little OCD storage system. I have yet to face going back there to clear up all of the damage. There is no saving and no save scumming. This is like playing on a virtual server. If you want to AFK, find somewhere safe to hide. You can't save scum and second guess yourself. If you fuck up, it's for keeps. Fortunately, building stuff is forgiving in as much as most stuff returns all material components if you deconstruct it. But crafted items are in the world for good. If you make the wrong thing, the materials are used and gone. If you lose something valuable somewhere, you either search for it until you find it, or move on. Valheim is a simple yet brilliant all-round game system, yet despite its relatively simple and straightforward design and progression, it ends up being exceptionally complex when you get deep into the game. I cannot explain how they got this all so right, but I can certainly explain one factor in how they got there. It is incidentally one reason why this game is excelling in a time when so many AAA games are floundering, embarrassing, busy work simulators. And that factor is this: Valheim is practically the opposite of most live service, always online, big budget monetized games. So what do I mean by that? Your average big budget time sink video game is a mechanism designed to keep you engaged whilst it persistently encourages you to spend more money on other stuff. Often, it deliberately frustrates and obstructs the player and impedes progress to push you towards in-game purchases. It's the cart that pushes the horse. It's a microtransaction delivery system with a game built around it. Valheim might have similar grinding progression mechanisms and systems as other games, but significantly, it's all organised and balanced around providing the player with a meaningful and enjoyable gaming experience. They set out to make a good game, nothing else, no other agenda. You see, you can't build a game designed to frustrate the player into spending money and not frustrate them. If your game is designed to piss people about so they spend more money in the online shop, the players obviously will harbour resentment and frustration. They may well stay engaged, but they will be pissed off, precisely because that's how the game is structured. Piss them off so they go to the in-game shop. Valheim, however, is just focusing on being a good game. Just that. And that's why it's winning. Valheim is precisely the right game coming along at the right time, as proven by its success. 2020 was an appalling year for video games. Fuck, I ended up sinking hundreds of hours into Call of Duty, Black Ops Cold War, and that game is on my top 10 list for worst games of the year. Half the world is in lockdown, and for many reasons a lot of the world is a shitty place to be right now. With game publishers failing to deliver and a lot of people needing some escapist distracting entertainment, along came Valheim. A small indie developer drops this on the table and says, there you go. A game set in a fantasy world where you can get lost for weeks, exploring, building, crafting and sailing. The contrast between safe and dangerous zones means you get to balance your light relief and your thrill factor at your own self-determined pace. And on top of this, the added survival mechanics, day-night cycle, completely unique randomised world every time you play, and the very atmospheric, and downright scary at times, environments, means that at times things get genuinely tense. Irongate Studios did a brilliant job of combining factors which not only make a game great, but make it distracting to the point where it mentally sucks you in completely. There is a balance between the risk, tension and danger, offset against the crafting, the safe havens you build and the security of arming yourself with better gear and weapons. Combine this with an obsessive sandpit of OCD base building, tech trees, material farming and the ability to languish at the end of the day relatively safe in the confines of your lovely shack, base, fort or eventually your castle complex. And the end result is a great whole game experience. Valheim pretty much demonstrates clearly that indie games can be absolute top shelf. It also supports the statement that AAA publishers are basically fucked by their own business model. They can't take risks because they're leveraging multi-million, fractional billion-dollar advertising budgets. Advertising budgets that incidentally are now regularly vastly more money than is actually spent on making the games themselves. They are risk averse, and they stick to old tested formulas. That's why AAA games are getting so fucking boring these days. Valheim and Iron Gate Studios shames the AAA video game industry completely. Utterly. But, hypothetically, let's imagine if these guys had pitched several AAA publishers with this idea, and what would have happened? Well, in the incredibly unlikely event this game concept got the green light, Electronic Arts would have plugged it full of skins and loot boxes, given it a shitty cover on the box, promoted and released it before it was ready, and then abandoned it. Activision would have stuffed it full of psychometric methods of incentivising people to buy stuff instead of grinding it on a monthly rolling reset. Ubisoft would have probably massively enhanced the base graphic skins, but not optimised it, so the game looked amazing, in theory, but it ran like shit with smoke belching out of your gaming rig, whilst the frame rate yo-yoed harder than a community manager's mood swings. There would be a vendor on every island that would sell microtransactions, and you would be able to buy bundles of wood, which would be in short supply, and you'd be able to buy rainbow unicorn skins for your Viking longboat. Not even kidding. And they would probably have copped a feel of some young intern's tit. Too much? I don't think that was too much. Thank fuck Iron Gate Studios buddied up with Coffee Stain Publishing. Thank fuck Henrik Tornqvist and Richard Svensson are the kind of people they are. Thank fuck Valheim turned out in its current low-tech but excellent state. Valheim might be a simple game, but it all works together superbly to create some excellent escapist entertainment. I highly recommend Valheim to anyone. But for now, good luck and happy hunting.